All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes, just a chance for leaders from around the world to come together, ask questions about day in, day out struggles of leadership. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention is if you're coming to this episode late, you missed the live session, not a problem. If you have a question, if you have a frustration, a struggle, you can always drop those down into the comment section and I will get them on the next episode so that you can get your questions answered. And of course, if you need to be anonymous, you can always direct message me on Facebook. You can always send me an email, cm@cameronmorsey.com, and I will go ahead and get those on the next episode and keep you anonymous, adjust the situation as need be. Our first question does actually come from yesterday's episode, and just one that came in after the episode was over. And it's from Cindy. And the question is our project assistant, laborer, delivery representative was in the Canadian Armed Forces for a number of years and seems to not respond well to constructive criticism. He is also very demanding. What suggestions do you have when presenting him with ideas and suggestions, as well as confirming conformity within the team's value system and overall expectations? Whew. Oh, wow, Cindy, you're getting us started off with a big one here. The first comment that I would have on this, and this is just a general misperception with those that are in the military, and especially those that are in leadership roles in the military. Anybody who's been in the military will tell you that it isn't just a situation where the sergeant, captain, whatever says jump and you say how high. There is buy-in that needs to take place. There's lots of times where they will sabotage a particular directive that's going on because they don't believe in it. And so don't think that just because they were in the military, they're used to just taking orders and giving 100% on it. So that's the first thing that I just kind of wanted to address right away with that. And the next thing, kind of diving into it just a little bit, because there's a whole lot that you want to unpack in there. And one of the ways that you want to do that is you want to bring this person into the discussion, kind of reading over your question again here. And when we talk about constructive criticism, bring them in and explain why a particular thing is important. All right, it isn't just that they did it wrong. They did it wrong because it has this and this and this effect. And ask him, what do you think about that? Am I missing something here? So bring it in as a dialogue, not necessarily that something just between, one-way conversation. So good to see everybody jumping on here, Lisa, Patty, and Maxadur. So make sure that you are bringing him in, give him the why and the reason and the effect of his particular behavior. Now, if he's coming off as a little bit abrupt, again, I'd have a transparent conversation with him. And you can reference prior military experience. Hey, you know what? You had an order, you had to follow it. But there were some orders that you followed with passion, and there were other orders that you followed that weren't with that sort of passion. And so what I would encourage you to do is give the reasoning behind what it is that you're asking people to do. They think that you're in the military and you're being abrupt and everything else. Again, this is a very transparent, very real conversation. This isn't surprising to him. He sees this, he knows this. So be upfront and honest and say, they're not taking it in a particular way. What I'd like you to work on is work on the why. Work on the reason why you're giving them that directive. Hey, I need you to go over there and do that. I need you to go over there and do that. That's not good enough. Give a simple sentence fragment. I need you to go over there and do that because we have these people coming in another half hour and we need to be ready for them so that we keep things going. I need you to go over there and do this because I need to take the other workers and put them over on this area. You'll notice it's a sentence fragment. It's not a ton of information. One of the reasons that people don't explain their decisions and explain their directives in leadership is they don't think that they have time. But quite frankly, A, it doesn't take much time up front, and B, it's a whole lot better than having a demotivated staff that isn't on board with something and that might try to sabotage it, delay it, whatever else. So Cindy, that would be a couple of things that I would broach with this individual. And I know if you jump on this, we can go ahead and have a follow-up kind of conversation on this. And again, for all of you out there, if you have any questions and the advice that I give doesn't necessarily resonate, let me know. We'll try something else and see if we can come up with something else. RM Carla, so good to see you here. So as we've had some people jump on here, if you have any questions, go ahead, drop down into the comment section, and I will just kind of field them in real time here. In the meantime, I will shut down that over there. Still trying to get the live session on YouTube working at the same time as the Facebook session. I'd like to go live there for my subscribers so I can get those questions from them as well as the questions from those of you here on Facebook. And if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, it's a great way to kind of digest all of the different videos that I have out there. It's just an easier platform sometimes to take that video stuff in. Nick, good to see you here. Next question I have is, how can I correct unsatisfactory job performance without disciplinary action? I'd like to keep things positive and motivational versus negative and accusational. So the big thing from a job performance and from a accountability standpoint is the labeling of clear expectations. And I'll describe this in a joke that I'll say is a joke in management consulting circles. And there is a CEO and he's got a problem with a manager, and so he brings in a consultant to coach this manager's performance so that it improves. And the consultant comes into the CEO and he says, okay, so I understand he's got poor job performance. What is it that you'd like to see from him? And so the CEO lays out all of the things that he would like to see this manager do. 3 weeks later, the consultant gets a call from the CEO and says, I got to see you right away. This is amazing. Consultant comes into the CEO and says, hey, what's going on? And the CEO says, his performance has turned around 180. What on earth did you do? And the consultant kind of smiles to himself and says, I just gave him your expectations. So much of better performance is getting clear on expectations. It doesn't have to be a negative. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a positive. But getting clear on what good performance is. What is bad performance? What is exceptional performance? You'll have a lot of people that will think that they are doing great, but find out that they're just in the good category and they want to be exceptional. So you'll see them lift their performance to meet those exceptional expectations. Get crystal clear on expectations. The second thing that you want to do, I would recommend a stack ranking. So take the people that are best performers and rank them based on whatever that performance metric is. And you can take people's names off of there. You can use employee numbers. You can use code names, whatever it is. Or you don't even necessarily have to display it if that doesn't match what's going on. But what you can do is you can bring those people in, every single employee, and say, hey, just so you know, we've got some of this reporting and I wanted to update you on what's going on. Right now in sales, you are number 3 out of 20. Right now as far as sales, you're number 18 out of 20. And so people can see that. You're not doing anything, disciplinary or anything else. You're just simply showing them the facts. So show that. So get crystal clear on expectations. And what I mean by that is what is poor performance, what is good performance, and what is exceptional performance. Do those 3 things and you'll see people naturally try to lift to certain thresholds. Then report on it on preferably a daily basis, if that makes sense. But at a bare minimum, a weekly basis, let them know where they stand and where they rank as far as their peers are. And that's something that can naturally get a little bit of motivation, a little bit of clarity. There is a lot of times where employees think that they're doing a great job. I see this a lot with those employees who have a long tenure with a particular company in a particular position. They think that they are doing absolutely fine, that they are one of the top performers. But lo and behold, when you actually stack rank them, they find that they're in the bottom third. And it's a big realization for them. So get clear on that information for them. And I think you'll naturally see a lift in the performance that you get from your team. So again, any questions, drop them down in the comment section. I've got a few that I just need to clean up here. And that is, what do you do about a colleague that does not pull their weight, but the boss doesn't do anything about it? One of the big things to do in that case, because you have no authority in that particular environment, they're clearly kind of taking advantage of the system is how I would phrase it. They're taking advantage of your great performance. What I would recommend is trying to build a little bit of teamwork. So it's a situation where it feels like you're sharing the load. So you take particular tasks that come in. Okay, hey, let's go ahead and take care of this stack of paperwork that we have. And so you work on it as a team, not necessarily separately. And the perception is that it's easier because it's 2 people working on a task instead of 1. But the reality is that you are potentially, if you structure it right, bringing them along and almost monitoring and managing their performance a little bit. That's a great way of doing it. Find a way to work with them as a team. The other thing is get crystal clear on any expectations and deadlines. All right, poor performers thrive in the gray area. They love the gray area because that becomes their natural excuse for so many things. So get crystal clear on what the expectations are, what the deadlines are, and why those things matter. So a lot of times that people miss deadlines is because they think those deadlines are arbitrary. No, we need to have this in by Friday so that the product ships on Monday and we can go ahead and move on from there. Such a key to getting some buy-in to a particular deadline. So teamwork and clear on expectations. That's a way to get a colleague to come around just a little bit. Next question is, what can I do if I'm in professional limbo between two management levels? I've been applying for a while in the hospitality industry for supervision and area management and have been told that I'm overqualified for supervision, and other times that they are looking for more experience in management or someone who has already been a manager. What do you recommend in this case? So when you find yourself kind of caught between that situation where you're too experienced for one thing and you're not experienced enough for the other, clearly you want to set your sights on that higher level. So get clear on what it is that they're looking for experience in that management level. So it might be in the hospitality industry. It might be dealing with crises. It might be dealing with what happens when the hotel is oversold. How do you deal with customer complaints? How do you manage poor performers? Get clear on what it is that they are looking for, and I want you to match that with what you're doing right now. Where are there opportunities where you can highlight where you stepped up to help with a crisis? Where are opportunities where you can say you stepped up and dealt with a difficult customer situation or a difficult employee situation? Those things. How have you managed employees? Have you trained employees? That sort of thing. So get clear on what they're looking for that higher level and find where you already have that experience. Now, if you don't have that experience, then this is where you get a discussion going with your current manager and say, hey, I'd love to deal with, to learn to deal with customers a little bit better. So the next time you have a pissed off customer, and this happens in hospitality all the time, as you well know, and it's not a fun conversation, so your manager would be very likely to bring you over to that situation. But ask them to step into that role. You get what you ask for. And so if you want to take on a special project, if you want to sit in with them on a hiring, if you need to be, have experience hiring and firing people, maybe not firing in your case, but look for those opportunities for experience. Get clear on what they're looking for. You will likely have some background, and you hit on that. So they say, well, you don't have any experience in management. Well, it depends on what you're looking for. Different roles and different companies have different responsibilities. I have dealt with, this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and make sure you're throwing that out there. You have likely more experience in those roles than they are giving you credit for. You just need to call it out. Great question. Love that question. And it has big applications for everybody else too. Office politics is existing in almost all companies. How would you know if you can trust a person? You trust a person by their deeds, and you trust a person by what they do when people aren't looking. So the issue with politics is that you are doing something not because it is right. You are doing something because of the behavior that you're looking to create in another individual. That's the basics of office politics. And so by doing that, you create a consistent level, a consistent type of behavior. So if you want to know whether you can trust somebody, do they talk about other people behind their back to you? Because if they do that to other people, they're likely doing it about you as well. Do they make the correct decision, or do they take the easy route that everybody's going to buy into? You can see from their behavior what it is that they are doing. So when we talk about office politics, one of the big things that I tell people is it's communication, transparent communication, making sure everybody is clear on what's going on, where everybody's going, what the goals are, deadlines, all of that. Be very crystal clear on your on your communication. Don't know where that came from. The other thing that you want to do in a political environment like that is you want to make it okay for people to make mistakes. One of the big reasons that politics thrives is because people are kind of covering up. They're taking the safe route, that sort of thing. You need to make sure it's okay to make mistakes. Now, as a leader, you can simply do that by acknowledging your own mistakes. So this is where I've screwed up. You know what? I really screwed that up. Those are powerful words for a leader to say, because it gives people the example of owning your mistake, and then you can show what you learned from it, and that it's okay to do that, if you do it for the right reasons with the right thought process behind it. So that's kind of how you deal with those office politics a little bit. So I hope that was helpful. Next question comes in, and it's how important do you think correct English is in a person with whom you are looking at placing in a leadership role? The key, when people say, how do you get better at leadership? Or what's the most important trait to have in leadership? The most important trait is the ability to communicate. Now, communication takes all kinds of different forms, because you will find that there are phenomenal CEOs that are exuberant, that jump out on stage at company events and rally the troops. And then there's others that are highly analytical and more, I'm losing the word there. They aren't as outgoing. They're more introspective. However, both of those people, when they're great in CEO roles, communicate really well. They might communicate in different channels, they might communicate in different ways, but they are getting across their message. So when we talk about English, and I've dealt with this question before as far as proper English, and that may be what you're getting at in this particular case. The key is, are they communicating what they need to communicate? I don't want to say I don't care what sort of grammar they use on it, but part of me doesn't. They need to be able to get across the message. And the message doesn't actually come across with just words. The vast majority of communication is read through body language and tone of voice. So if they got those two down, then they probably got the rest of it down. Yeah, it might not come across in an email particularly well, but it's something that they can match up. The other thing is there's a long history of communication. It isn't just one particular instance of communication. There's a lot to it. And so if they're able to establish a rapport with their team, if they're able to establish trust with their team, then their communication is naturally going to be better. People will buy in quicker because they trust what the boss is saying, but they'll also be open to asking questions if they have any questions about it. And so that would be the other thing in it. So yes, being able to speak proper English is a factor in it, but there's more to it than that. So if they are able to get across, if they are able to communicate well, regardless of grammar and everything else, then they're fine. However, if it's inhibiting their ability to communicate, then yes, that is an issue with leadership. So as we've had more people jump on here, if you have any questions, any frustrations, anything that's been bugging you this week, by all means drop down into the comment section. Let me know what it is, and I will just tackle it here in real time. So I've got a few questions that I've received offline, and I'll go ahead and get to those as well here. What should my game plan be when integrating into a workplace that is totally different than I have experience in? New country and new culture. Any points to focus on? I think in this case, what you do is you acknowledge the deficiency. So acknowledge that you're coming from a different industry, that you're coming from a different country, that you're coming from a different culture. All right? Acknowledge it. It's the big elephant in the room, so there's no reason to run away from it. Everybody sees it. So acknowledge that. But what I want you to focus on, I want you to focus on the job itself and learning as much as possible. And when you're stepping into a new role, whether it is in a different country, culture, industry, or whether it's the exact same industry in the exact same city you've been working in with a bunch of people that you've already worked with before, I recommend 5 questions. Ask every single employee these 5 questions. It will bring you up to speed. It will establish rapport with the team. It will give them a sense of ownership, and it will just get you taking off like a rocket in this new position. Those 5 questions. What do you see going right in the organization? What do you see going wrong in the organization? Where are there opportunities we need to take advantage of? Where are there problems we need to fix? And how can I help you do a better job? If you ask those 5 questions, you will get an enormous amount of information that will help bring you up to speed. You'll also get a ton of suggestions on what your next steps should be from the people that are working in it. And what you do with that is you simply take the low-hanging fruit. Don't start with maybe the most important thing. I want you to start with a few things that are easy. I always use the example of, swapping out the printer. The printer doesn't work. Or we need, more water in a particular area, or we need to change this around. Some low-hanging fruit, whatever that is, take it, address it, and let everybody know that you are addressing it. And that is going to go a long way in establishing what you're like as a leader to the team. Then what you can do is you can go back 4 weeks later and ask these same questions again, and you're going to get a ton more feedback, because when the team knows that you take their feedback and you value it enough to take action on it, then they're going to be way more likely to give you more of it. But this is what starts you off on the right foot. So yes, acknowledge the cultural issues, the industry issues in your background, but focus on the work, and the work starts with your team. So bring them into that discussion. When you do that, you're going to start off the way that you want to, and you're going to build up that knowledge that you need from a cultural, country, and industry standpoint. You're going to give yourself a ton of knowledge from that. Find ways to listen, and you'll be better. Is the ability to interview for leadership positions more important than the ability to be a leader? No. I'll answer that one really quickly. You know what? You can go ahead and fake leadership and get the job, but it's going to come out in the end. Don't get me wrong. Hey, you might get paid for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, depending on the company, but you're going to be struggling that whole time. So it's more important to build up the leadership traits than to build up your interviewing skills. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for interviewing skills, but you can practice those things, but you need to have the background and the substance that gives you the confidence to move forward with an interview. So no, it is not more important to have the ability to interview for a leadership position than to actually have the skills of a leader. Working through performance improvement plans, what would you propose as a guide to having a fair result and not one that allows for results that will be interpreted, swayed out of your favor? When you're working with the performance improvement plan, the first thing is, what is the goal? What is the performance that you are looking for? Is it a sales perspective? It is an order ship perspective, invoices process perspective. What is it that you're driving at? Where is the performance deficient that it needs to be improved? So you want to get crystal clear on what that is. Then you bring the employee in, and by bringing them in, I mean bring them into the discussion. What do you think we could do to improve in these areas? Where do you think we're falling short, where we might have problems that if we eliminated those, it would improve performance, and where there are opportunities where we might be able to take better advantage of it? And so you bring it in as a question. It isn't a you discussion. A correct performance improvement plan is teamwork. You don't just give tasks for the employee to do. When you do a performance improvement plan, if you want to be serious about it and you want to do it right, it's a question of what are you both going to do? So are you going to follow up with this person? Not 3 weeks later with the next performance improvement plan. Are you going to follow up with them 3 hours later? The next day? Okay, so we talked about doing this and this. How is that going? Because you want it to be a life cycle discussion. You want to be where it's okay, quite frankly, to make mistakes. You need to improve. And to improve, you risk the chance of making mistakes. So they might try to sell a particular way and it's not working. That's fine. What are we learning from it? Is there a way that we can tweak it so that, you know, if you change the verbiage on something, it might work a little bit better? Or is there another way to tackle the same thing? So you want it to be a living and breathing process. So performance improvement plans, get clear on the expectations. Bring the employee into the discussion. Where are they falling short? Where are they seeing resistance? What problems do they think that they're having? Come up mutually with a plan moving forward, and then follow up on that and make sure that that plan moving forward is living and breathing, and you are finding out what's working with it, what's not working with it, and you're making adjustments. It isn't just something that you come back a month later and say, yeah, your performance still isn't good, so out you go. You don't want a situation like that. So hope that helps you out there. So Yab's got the next question for us. Sorry for the out of topic there. Is 3 channels in YouTube from your name. Please let me know which one is yours. I believe it is Cameron L. Morsey. So at Cameron L. Morsey, and you'll see a bunch of videos on there. You can check all 3 of those. And it'll be pretty obvious which one has mentor minutes on there. Appreciate you throwing that out there, Soyab. I want to make sure that everybody takes advantage of that. I'm just kind of logging in over here and seeing for myself what it might be. Because I was trying to, and I hope everybody checks it out. It's I find it much easier to get through videos over on YouTube, and I've learned a ton of stuff over there as well. So let's see, let's go to my channel. And it pulls up here. I think it's Cameron L. Morsey is what it's saying. But again, you can see it on there, and you'll see all the different videos here with the same sort of format and background. Thanks, Saya. I appreciate that question and clarification, and I hope you enjoy it over there. Next question is, what's your best marketing strategy after a prominent competition has been bad-mouthing your business? So when a competitor comes in and bad-mouths your business, this is why it's important to have done everything right in the first place. Because this can actually be to your advantage, them bad-mouthing you. So when a competitor comes in and they bad-mouth you, it's a test for you. Have you been supporting the customer the right way? Have you been supporting them with the right product? Have you been following up when you need to? Have you been giving them what it is that they want to have? Because when a competitor comes in and say, yeah, you know what, Cameron's great, but Cameron never follows up. And the person says, I don't know what you're talking about. Cameron gets back to me in an hour every time I send him an email. Like, that's ridiculous. Now all of a sudden they've diminished their own trust. They're bad-mouthing a competitor, which isn't necessarily the best way of handling a situation, although it is kind of understood. And also realize that, you know what, if I've got somebody from AT&T and I've got somebody from Verizon here, I expect them to badmouth each other, and I expect half of what they say about the other individual to be lies, mistruths, fabrications, gray area, white lies, that sort of thing. So I don't consider competitors bad-mouthing you as a particularly bad thing unless you haven't been doing your job. And then that's a problem. But that's the call out for you to turn things around and become better at your job. Address those areas where you might be sensitive. You need to follow up on those things. So take it as a test, but don't worry about it nearly as much as you think, because the customer realizes what the competitor is looking to do in those situations and is taking what they say with a grain of salt. But if you've done your job, you don't really have too much to worry about in that case. What verbiage do you recommend when terminating an employee's employment? Good question. When we talk about terminations, firing somebody, use the more regular term for it. So when you're firing somebody, the conversation at that point should be relatively short and sweet. And so I'll tell you how that happens. Usually, when I was in management and I would have to let somebody go, that conversation almost never lasted more than 10 minutes. Usually it was 5 minutes, because you've done your work ahead of time. They've had their final warning. They know what the expectation is on things. They know that you're watching. They know that you have helped them to try to do this. And this is why it's important to, when you're writing people up and you're starting to go up that progressive discipline, that you involve yourself in their improvement. How can I help you do this better? Could I follow up with you a little bit more? Could I monitor more of your calls? Could I look over your shoulder as you're working? How about we meet, every couple of days and see how things are going? So it's not just every month, it's every couple of days, so we can look to make some improvements. When you do all of that ahead of time and you've told them, hey, this still isn't working, we can try a couple more things, but I need this improved by such and such date to this level, or this isn't going to work out. So when they come in to terminate them, it's not a surprise. They will act surprised. Don't get me wrong. Everybody is surprised when they get let go, regardless of the mistake that they've made, the poor performance they've had, all the prior discussions. But in their heart of hearts, they won't be surprised. When they come in, you say, hey, I want to bring you in here. We've had this issue with this, and the performance that we've seen last week, last month, yesterday, was not what we had talked about. And because of this specific incident or this specific metric, we're going to have to let you go. Now, you should have all the paperwork filled out ahead of time. So, you sign, spin it around, they sign, and out the door they go, quite frankly. It shouldn't be a surprise. If it is a surprise, if they have, I want to say retorts, if they have defensive attitudes towards something, then that means that you have probably failed a little bit in all of the initial steps. So set up the initial steps well, and the termination goes quick. Bring them in, explain the situation. They're not going to change your mind at this point. So there's no reason for this to be an open discussion. Other than prior ones, you want to open up their discussion. You want to get their feedback. This time, you don't. Here's the situation. Here's the thing that you messed up on. We've talked about this before. We've tried many times before, and unfortunately, it just looks like this is not going to work out. So I filled out this paperwork. You sign it, spin it around, they sign it, and out the door that they go. Now, you can follow up with some of the basics. Somebody from HR will be contacting you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to HR. Here's their number. You get ahead of any questions that they might have, because what you don't want is you don't You don't want to open up a conversation. It's almost the only time you'll ever hear me say that you don't open up a conversation with an employee. But you don't, because otherwise it's just going to go down that road and it's a waste of both of your times. The decision's been made at that point. So that's how to kind of handle the verbiage on terminations and just the termination process in general. I know it seems harsh, but you've been soft all the way up until this point with verbal warnings, written warnings, suspensions, performance improvement plans, all of that stuff. You've done the right job. When it still doesn't work out, it's time to move on. Good question though. How would you recommend recruiting in a small community? I have a very difficult time getting qualified applicants. Great question. I have a coaching client that works not in the outback of Australia, but in a small town in Australia, and getting qualified people is very difficult for her. The thing that you want to work on is not necessarily specific skill sets. You want to look for personality traits. So look at your best employees, and could be past employees, current employees, whatever it is. Look at those employees and what traits do they have? Do they have a natural sense of curiosity? Is that what is needed? Are they really great with the customers? They have that outgoing personality. That's what you like. Are they more analytical? What are the personalities? So look to your current staff and look to kind of build almost a Frankenstein perfect candidate. And then what you do is you go looking for those traits, not necessarily the current skill set. And so what you are beholden to at that point is coming up with a training system and a training setup that brings those skill sets to bear for people. So you get the right person for the job and then you build the skills. So in small communities, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the right personality traits, and then it is on you to create a training program that brings those skills up to where they need to be. Now, in some cases, there's a lot that goes into that skill set. And so you'd like to have somebody that is, already has that skill set, so you don't have to spend, in some cases, it might be 4, 5, 6 weeks of training to bring them up on skill sets. That being said, again, this becomes a test for you. So yes, you will invest 4, 5, 6 weeks where you're training them and you aren't getting any productivity out of them. Are you going to be in a position to keep them? It's a small community, so you may not have as many competitors for their services, shall we say. So there's a flip side to that as well. But are you going to be able to create an environment that keeps the person for longer? So that 4, 5, 6 weeks, if they stay with you for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, becomes very small. That being said, 4, 5, 6 weeks when you turn them over at the end of the year, that's an issue. So look at that tenure that you're putting in or the tenure that your employees have in creating that. But back to the original question, I kind of digressed there. Small community. If you're having trouble getting qualified applicants, look for personality traits and then build the skill sets on top of those personality traits. And I think that'll help out just a little bit there. Next question is, what tip would you recommend for someone who won't own their behaviors, even with multiple write-ups? Feedback loses its importance, loses its power when it is less specific and it is less timely. So if you have somebody that is not accepting that feedback, wait for them to make their next mistake, for the next incident to come up, and I want you to pull them in right away. And what you do is you reference that specific incident and write that as an illustrative of the behaviors that you've referenced before. So you had this call, you spoke to them in this way, use this verbiage. That's what we're talking about. And they'll have, if they're naturally built to be defensive, they'll have some defensive. Well, how do you think we could have done this? So I don't think that's correct. And it's not correct. So how can we create something, or how can we change that verbiage? How can we do something that meets something that I would find acceptable and you would find acceptable? Bring them into that discussion just a little bit. You want to get, if you have numbers, hard numbers, bring those hard numbers in black and white so they can see it. If they are, the other thing is stack ranking. So give them the sheet of the 30 employees and show them where they stand. Maybe take the names off of it, but show them where they stand, that they're near the bottom, in the bottom third, the bottom quarter, the bottom 10% in a particular area. Show them this stuff in black and white. Part of it, when you have somebody that won't own their behavior, part of it is that they understand the logic behind it, but they're looking for an excuse to get out of it. It's learned behavior in a lot of cases. You see this with people that get emotional immediately when they get bad news. What they've been trained in many cases to do is if they get emotional, if they start crying, then it all goes away. The conversation stops. And you can't reward that behavior. So keep having those discussions with them. Keep getting specific. Keep being timely. I realize this takes more work on your part, but what's the other option? That you let them atrophy as far as their behavior is concerned? That's not acceptable. So get with them, be timely, put other stuff aside, make it a priority, and talk them through in black and white, and ask for their solutions to it. Well, I understand that you don't feel this, this, and this. What would make it better? What would help you? What can I do to help you meet these scales? That's powerful. Use it. What can I do to help you meet these expectations? What do you need from me? Is it, and see the discussion with a couple of ideas. Is it more consistent follow-up? Would you like me to coach you in this particular area? Would you like me to train you for an hour this afternoon in this area so that you're clear on it? So don't give them any excuses. Be of service to them and make things as black and white as possible to them so that they don't have any gray area to wiggle around in. Next question is, how do you become a good leader? Well, I'll just cut right to the chase. How do you become a good leader? Great leaders communicate well and engage with their teams. And the reason that I have those two things, you need to be able to communicate vision. You need to be able to communicate expectations. You need to be able to communicate goals. You need to be able to communicate what to do in a crisis. So communication is a real key. Part of communication is engaging with your team. Because when you engage with your team, you get access to more information. And from more information comes better decisions on your part. What it also does is when you're engaging, you're building ownership with the team members. You're building trust with the team members, which makes your communication easier. It's a little two-step loop on those things. So if you want to be a great leader, work on communication and work on engagement. And I will tell you how you actually do that. You focus on asking questions. Questions bring the other person into the discussion and it forces you to listen. It's the big thing that's missed in communication. There's lots of leaders that are great from the stage, projecting ideas, throwing out the vision, that sort of thing. And they are absolutely horrible at listening to their teams. You need to be both. And the way you are both is you ask questions. So it may simply be, somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm having this problem. What should I do? Instead of just giving them the answer, ask them, well, what do you think? What do you think we should do? Half the time, if not more, they will give you the exact same answer that you would give. They're just looking for permission to do it. So bring them into the discussion with questions. That's kind of the steps to becoming a great leader, is asking great questions. Last question that I have offline here, and if you have any questions, drop them down in the comment section. I'll tackle them here in real time. The question is how do you deal with weak leaders? And sadly, you're going to run across that probably repeatedly over the course of your career. Hey, if there were better leaders, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you talking about leadership right now. The one thing that I recommend in regards to weak leadership is to find a way to strengthen them. And it's almost opposite, because now what I'm doing is I'm putting the responsibility on you. But what happens is when you put the responsibility and you own that responsibility, you feel more empowered, you feel less helpless in a particular situation, and you're focused more on actions that you can take as opposed to coping with other things. So it changes your focus a little bit. All weak leaders, all weak leaders have strengths. What are those strengths? How can you help that leader bring those strengths out? This is often how leaders work with employees. How do you bring their strengths out? How do you minimize their weaknesses? Are they terrible at communication? So does it just take that, when they send out that email that comes across completely wrong, is it you clarifying it, a reply to all clarification? Or do you just stand up and say, hey, just so you know, everybody got that email. I think what he's trying to get at is this. And so you find ways to cover for that weakness. You are of service to your leader. The greatest leader that is out there has weaknesses. Just like I said, every single leader has a strength. Everyone, no matter how bad. Every great leader that's out there also has a weakness. How can you be of service? So dealing with a weak leader is like dealing with a weak employee. How can you magnify their strengths, minimize their weaknesses, and work with them? With a realization that no leader is perfect and every leader has potential. Wow, that sounds really good. So again, not necessarily maybe what you want to hear. I'm putting a lot of the onus on you. But when you take control of your life and your circumstances and start taking action on that, it feels better. It's much easier to deal with those situations when you're doing something to make things better yourself. So with that being said, if you have any questions, if you've gotten to the end here and you just thought of something, go ahead, drop it down in the comment section. I will get it on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. Thrilled to have everybody here, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.